Greetings, my name is Michael Miller. This is the Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Core New Core, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor, and especially if you're exploring on your own and you're looking for more. Meaning you're a student, and you haven't even begun to think of yourself as an instructor yet. And that's fine. Hold on to that for as long as you can, because at some point to go further in your own practice, it seems beneficial to teach, almost irresistible to go teach in order to get better at what you want to do yourself. That's another good paradox. I need to start a list of paradoxes in Pilates, because as much as several of my students have been ardent students and never dreamt of themselves as teaching, ended up becoming very fine instructors, and glad for it, because it took them deeper into their own practice. Okay? So, three things. I have three topics to get in over my head with today. And the first topic is aware of the alternative. Aware of the alternative. The second title is there is an aching pain to the need to keep Pilates personal. There is an aching pain to the need to keeping Pilates personal. And number three is MMP on the Pilates spectrum. Okay, so those are my three topics for today. How are things with you? Mondays always seem overwhelming because I have 2 days of work, Saturdays and Sundays notes, and then Monday seems to be an explosion of notes. But here I made numbers. Aware of, okay. A two-word phrase that I would have you be familiar with is aristocratic ascendancy. And that's the presumption of the aristocracy to a role of authority. Okay? And it's presumption. Authority is what matters, and presumption is this key thing. And if it weren't for Pilates having some characteristic of its own, some unique essence of its own, then Pilates would be left to be defined by and ruled by aristocratic ascendancy. But to the extent that you feel close to Joe and whatever his passion was, it's not for me, it's not. Oh, okay. Excuse me for reading notes in front of you. It's not for me. And it doesn't have to be about you either. I'm talking about being a Pilates instructor. I said we will live, but then I scratched out the will and said we live in a culture that presumes because not enough people are aware of the alternative. There, I tried to complete the loop of my title. My title is Aware of the Alternative. What alternative is there that I'm pointing to? That's the alternative to aristocratic ascendancy, meaning the aristocracy has the authority because they're the aristocracy, and they presume then that they do have the authority. But the real authority in Pilates has an alternative that then I would simply label neoclassical Pilates. Because classical Pilates is based on aristocratic ascendancy. But beyond that is a point of view based on Joe's book that steps outside of that way of looking at things, especially that way of, or that place of assuming your authority, to some other place for assuming legitimacy and credibility and having a sense of, literally, a sense of what makes it what it is that empowers you to be who you want to be, who you think you are as a Pilates instructor. All right, so that was like Monday. No, Saturday, I mean. Now, on number two, maybe the title needs to read this first, that Pilates is personal. And just recently I've been drawn into an interaction with a student who feels very deeply about Pilates and her connection to it and what it is and her interest in defending that against what's not what she values. Right? Pilates is personal. So to me, it means, Pilates means to me what it means to me. And it means to you what it means to you. And it means to your student what it means to your student, and it means to Joseph Pilates what it means or meant to Joseph Pilates. And I would take, in MMP, there's one more step to that. Because at least within MMP, Pilates is something to itself. Right? It doesn't have anything to do with how personal it is to you, or to me, or to Joe, or to your student, or to any group or body, anybody else. Right? It's personal. And because it's so significant in the human experience to coordinate your capacities of being, thinking, and observing, that realm of observing that ushers in the universe in a very cosmic way, can be attached to or identified with or cherished or treasured however it's described. For me, within MMP, it's a profound experience. It's a real experience. And it's not something that thinking can dominate or dictate in or assume superiority in. There you go. In Pilates, there is no superiority in being smart or smarter, as though the smartest has the most authority about Pilates. In the MMP point of view, that doesn't have to be. It isn't. Because Pilates is what it is to itself. And what it is to itself is, in the MMP definition, is uniform eccentric loading flowing through progressive patterns of movement. That's what I'm selling you. A definition to the ideal. Based on 3 things in Joe's book. The infringement on the Pilates culture, that there is a why to what it is, that there's an explanation to what it is not a welcome message to a culture that up till now has been able to make believe Pilates is whatever they wish. And so I don't expect the Pilates culture is going to change much because of how self-serving it can be to keep it ill-defined and malleable. And something that will maintain a parasitic connection. I'm talking, okay, man. In talking with this student, fellow teacher, student to me, fellow teacher in the world out there, my heart really goes out to the defense of what is held to be so personal by the student who's an instructor. One and the same in a way, but by that person I'm talking to, student and instructor, right? And yet, you can go hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, and stay huddled within an aristocratic womb of self-righteousness or presumption of aristocratic ascendancy. Or you can be pragmatic and be a survivor and look at what's happening. Oh, man. And recognize that an explanation of it that allows you to make whatever you want to beyond that, because the assertion is that it is ideal. Right? Now you can try to define it as MMP has, and your definition may be different. But explaining why is an invasion of the Huns to an area that's been presumed to be one of personal attunement and passage of a tradition. With a broad 100% capability of interpretation, using general guidelines as a structure to operate within, if you call that a structure. I honor your personal connection to Pilates, whatever that is. And that may be all there is, or that may be a truth to you that I will never know. All I have is the sense of the missile between my shoulder blades, pressing me forward to profess this point of view as clearly as I can and as well as I can, so that you can own it as I do. So I guess that takes me to number 3 out of the 2. So number 3 is the MMP on the Pilates spectrum. So right there, the title itself, MMP on the Pilates spectrum, delivers the message because it's about Pilates and it uses the word spectrum. And it refers to MMP on the spectrum of Pilates. And spectrum is a distribution. And somewhere in my notes, in terms of making a distinction, is seeing the spectrum between sentimental and intellectual. And to me, that's as easy as between amygdala and hippocampus and prefrontal cortex. 2 different parts of the brain, but they have to be connected. One being thinking and the other being observing in the body in the moment of the doing. So MMP on the spectrum of Pilates, from being so personal that it's a study that you found master instructors and they gave you everything you feel you want or would ever need to be the teacher you want to be. The world is filled with that, those, us, everybody. I say to all of those people, be that you wish. And don't waste energy lamenting what else there is out there in the Pilates tsunami. On the spectrum of Pilates perception is a point of view called MMP, that represents a point of view. And it's an ideal view based on Joe's book. Recite the 3 things from Joe's book. Add the definition of core new tension and Michael Miller Pilates. And you can be a presenter of something that's up here and not within here. Most of my friends and most of my associates, my friends don't care. They're not into Pilates like we're talking about. But in terms of Pilates, all of my fellow instructors, students, they hear what I have to say, and even though I can point it out, and they can say I can feel that, even then, I guess the point I want to make is that willful ignorance is a big part of the Pilates culture, hiding in its wish to have Pilates be strictly a personal thing. And so there, as attractive as that is, and as wishful thinking from my point of view as that is, I know it for pretty sure, for real sure. I can feel it. I live in it. And you're listening, and the more you get into and find core new tension as something sensational and know how to use spring tension externally to make alignment sensational, the more you know about core new tension and how to engage it between your ears and your shoulders, you know where your head belongs. People recognize, recognize is a good word, good posture. And why is that? That's because you're stretched out in a rubber band. That's because instead of your body just sort of being stacked on itself and making elongation, you're more lined up, so you're under less stress and gravity. And in getting there through core new tension, you're more uniformly distributing your load so that even though you're just standing there in space, dynamically you're lighter. And that's me just using the word dynamically as a layman, not technically. By the year 4040, a lot of that math and science will be addressed in terms of the difference between an inert load and a dynamics, like water in a swimming pool, suspended above ground, and the physics that it takes to support the dynamic load rather than a static load. The great thing as a Pilates instructor is all you have to do, all you have to know is that it makes sense, literally, and intellectually. And that the smarter a person is, the more they can go into what is the basis of the point of view. Hermit.com for the website. What's new for the blog. There's a lot on the blog if you haven't already been there. So, I obviously haven't found an attractive message to people that cherish Pilates deeply and feel a personal connection to it, that they want to protect and preserve. From my point of view, the best way to protect and preserve what matters to me about the method is the mat itself and the definition, because I take it literally and find an experience from that, and the statement that the means to the effort is uniform. Contrology develops the body uniformly. You know, it's in the act of doing it that it's uniform. It develops the body uniformly. One of my questions, I got really abstract to the point where I didn't go there on any of this, but what determines us from them? See? Is there any word us without there being a them? And in that regard being a distinction. Us to me is reaching for, as a Pilates instructor, is being aware of the biomechanics of core new tension and using them to your advantage in your pursuit of doing Pilates. All right. To me, being a Pilates presenter, as I try to, help figure that in my mind at how I want to do it and how I would encourage you to do it, I see like throwing a life vest, a life ring out with a rope on it to somebody that's just in the water, adrift in their personal connection to Pilates. And you find out that they don't want the ring and they're just shaking their fist at you for invading the space or being interested in taking anyone out of the environment that someone prefers to be in and stay undisturbed. This all comes back to, you can't go out and press your view out into the world as much as you can just work with what comes in front of you and project what you have. And those who will resonate with what you have to say will find you. Hopefully, obviously, life can't live forever. So read between the lines and see behind the curtain and add two and two and direct your thinking. Geist.